Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's webinar. Wonderful to have you. It's amazing that you're joining, although the weather is so beautiful here in England and probably in most places. So I hope that you can all hear me well. If not, just let me know. I'm Veronica. I'm the founder of the Conscious Relationship School. And tonight's topic is about how to create team attitude in your relationship. So it's a really important topic for me because what I notice basically in my work is that a couple can be all right as long as there is no conflict, no stress. But as soon as there is a problem, it's like this immediate disconnection happening, and then there's war basically in the house, to say it very simply. And it doesn't have to be like this. Of course, conflict is just a normal part of life, right? Can't be avoided, and it doesn't have to be avoided, but we don't have to go into war mode, as I call it. We can stay connected with each other and find a solution that fits both partners. And of course, this attitude can be widened not just for romantic relationships, but also for family relationships, for relationships with children and friends, and even at work. So that's a little bit of because most people have been brought up like this. That's the reason why this is happening. But it's super, super stressful for a relationship when there's always this, we are kind of like close, and then we fight, and then we are like hate each other. And then you have to work really hard to create connection again. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And it's also going to be a bit of an interactive webinar. So I'd be super happy if you guys want to share maybe about your experiences. I'll ask some questions, and you can just use the little raise hand button, and then I'll unmute you. And otherwise, also you can use the chat as well, and I'll read the answers out as well. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen in just a second. Let me just get everything finished up here. Yes, wonderful. Okay, cool. So let's go. All right. So the agenda for today is why most couples go into war mood when conflict arises. What's the reason behind this? It's always good to understand the why, and that's why I always start to understand the topic more deeply. The problem of what I call playing zero-sum games in relationships, the role of defense mechanisms in conflict, and how we can create team attitude as a way to support each other even when there's tension in the relationship. And that actually is like the goal. I would say if you are at this point that even though you feel emotional, you feel hurt, you feel scared, you feel that you have to kind of like fight for yourself, but you can stay calm and stay connected with your partner, that's gold, basically. All right. So before we get started, just quickly, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Veronica Amaya. I grew up in Germany, and I live right now with my English husband in England, in southern England, in the countryside. And my job is relationship coach. So I help people in one-on-one sessions to create better relationships. I actually work mostly with single people, but I also work sometimes with people in relationships. And my clients mostly come to me after they had a series of difficult relationships, and then they realize there's a pattern. And so they are like, oh, I think it's not the other person. I must do something to attract always the same kind of person. And that's actually wonderful, because the only access of power you always have is you, right? You cannot influence other people, but you can learn better relationship skills. You can learn better skills of discernment to ultimately choose a partner who fits better. But even then, when you have found a partner that fits really good, to also learn helpful tools to make this relationship better. And as mentioned, I'm the founder of the Conscious Relationship School here in Meetup. I teach, I think, since maybe 2021, regularly in free webinars. And yeah, I really like it. So yeah, welcome. All right. So I want you to look at these, just, these pictures and just feel like, or, think about how does this, what arises in you when you look at these people? Like what comes up for you when you see such a person that is reacting in this way? If you would meet someone like this, what would be your first reaction? And yeah, you can just type something in a chat, or if someone wants to speak, of course, as I said, just raise your hand and then we can also have a chat. So Scylla, I hope I say your name right, says fear, anxiety, close up. Yes, right. So she sees someone like this and her reaction would be like this, to disconnect, to not wanting probably to talk to that person anymore, feeling scared. Yes. Someone else maybe? This, by the way, I would say is like probably the standard way most people react when they are in a conflict with anybody. So we have the classic like blaming, we have the, not talking to each other, kind of like this horrible silence in the room that is really thick. We have the one person maybe being really stubborn, and the other one being like kind of like hurt and a bit powerless. And then of course we have, maybe you guys know this look, especially from women, it's like this, oh my gosh, you're disgusting. It's like, it's really terrible, this look. Yeah. So the reason why I show these pictures is because all of these people, every single one of them is displaying a defense mechanism to keep themselves protected. So that's very important to understand in every conflict, Most people are not like shit. Most people just immediately feel like they have to protect themselves because in childhood they never learned a safe way how to have a conflict. They didn't learn that they can just calmly state what's the problem, can talk about their feelings and state what they would need to move forward. But instead they feel like they have to go into the defense mechanism. And defense mechanisms, I'm going to talk to in more detail later, but they are all kinds, So some people, they go into attack, like the guy who is pointing the finger, like blame. Others go into retreat, maybe more like this one, cold shoulder. Others feel overwhelmed and maybe kind of like exude an air of helplessness. That's also a defense mechanism. If you make yourself kind of like, if you show that you're helpless. Others would, for example, be stubborn. And this one would be this kind of like disgusted look. Of course, also it's a very big defense. And there was another one in the chat, but sometimes I just lose the stupid chat box. Maybe someone can just type something so that it pops up. That would be super helpful. Okay, I'll read it out in a second. All right. So yes, so these are defense mechanisms, and yeah, there it is. Thanks. Oh, sorry. I thought there was another one. Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks, Stella. So, and the thing is, the problem with defense mechanisms is that it provokes the other person also to be defensive. So for example, this guy, immediately, if someone comes at me like this, I have a feeling I want to stab right back, or like, like, I'm not the problem, you're the problem. That's what I want to say. If someone gives me the cold shoulder, I also want to give them the cold shoulder, right? I want to get right back at them. If she gives me this disgusting look, this disgusted look, I also want to be like, hell, what do you want? And I also become like this, right? So that's the problem. So basically, we start a war when we react like this. And I want to show you today like a different way how you cannot do that within your partnership or other relationships in your life. So typical behaviors that make conflicts very painful are using harsh words or tone. And as I said, people fight in very different ways. So some use very harsh words or tone. If I'm fighting and I get triggered, that would be my defense reaction. So I'm more kind of like the aggressive type. Others would blame and accuse, maybe especially if they have done something wrong because they feel guilty, right? Then other people, they love to give ultimatums. That's also a really big one in quite, toxic relationships. Like, if you don't stop this, I'm going to break up with you. This type of behavior. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to leave. Then, of course, to judge and generalize, like, you always do this, you're never here, you're always late, you never listen to me. That's like a very generalized statement, right? And immediately creates defensive reaction, because it cannot be right that someone is never listening, right? It's exaggerated, not helpful at all. Then, of course, if someone is not listening properly, if someone is so concerned with driving their own point that they don't even listen, so it's very difficult to have any sort of like reasonable discussion with them, right? Then shaming the partner in front of others, that would be the classic situation maybe of, woman who's really angry at her husband because he came home late, then in front of his friends to, make a joke about him, super disrespectful, like very hurtful behavior. Then, closing off, leaving. Some people are like, that's there, instead of maybe screaming at someone, they just leave. That's also defense behavior. Not saying something until you explode, stuffing it all in, and then suddenly out of nowhere there's this intense reaction. That's also a way to protect oneself, defense mechanism. Then, of course, to punish, to maybe never really say that you have a problem, but in subtle ways, punish your partner. And then, of course, to just simply avoid difficult topics. We brush it all under the carpet. The British people are very good at this. Yeah. I always joke about this because in my relationship, my husband, he's English, he comes from a family where, they are the typical brush everything under the carpet family. And in my family, everyone is super aggressive and like screams. So it was good because now together we have arrived at a nice middle point where we talk about stuff, but we do it like in a relaxed and calm way. So it has worked out very well. But it was a long road. Yes. So, and basically, when we exhibit those behaviors, and usually, one person gets triggered, starts, and then the other one gets right into it, we are in war mode. And as I said in the introduction, it goes like this, a couple is close, is harmonious, feels connected, and there's a conflict, and then they are enemies, and they will fight, each other until there's like blood drawn and someone has won. But of course, in this situation, no one actually wins, right? Because at the end, it's just a butting of heads, and what will happen is that you're going to disconnect. And the thing is, even if you win like an argument, if it's like bad for the relationship, you're still going to lose. So, maybe like a classic example, let's say a woman really loves when her partner is bringing her flowers because it makes her feel really loved, right? Like, it's a beautiful thing, of course. But so what she does is that she tells him, that he doesn't care about her, and she starts shaming him and says like he's a loser, and her ex-boyfriend always did that. And so she kind of like bullies him, and maybe she wins the argument and he does do it, but he does it really reluctantly. And he actually feels a lot of resentment while buying the flowers. So has she really won? No, not really. Because first of all, it's a gift given, with a lot of resentment. And also, when resentment builds up like this, it just it bleeds into the relationship. And it will foster and potentially poison the relationship. So the conflict has not really won. The same as, for example, to go the other way around, that let's say a husband has a really good job opportunity somewhere and his wife is super reluctant to move. And then he says, okay, if you're not going to come with me, I'm just going to go alone. And so she reluctantly agrees and moves with him, but feels just hurt and upset because she feels that her needs were not important, and basically she has been like forced or manipulated into this. It's also going to bleed into the relationship. So and the same of course goes for very small interactions. So if you fight over who brings out the garbage or something small like this, it just accumulates. So this behavior is really like a poison for relationships. And I know that, for example, in my case, how it was that I thought the way I was brought up was that being right is the most important thing. And so it was really hard for me to, in the beginning, to prioritize my relationship happiness over being right and winning, the argument, winning the war. But as someone, I really realized how stupid that is, because every time I was prioritizing winning over being connected with my partner, I was losing also. And I was just creating a miserable, disconnected relationship. And it was just not worth it. And Scylla says, exactly, spot on. Yeah, exactly. All right. And I love this picture here because I think it shows so beautifully what is very often happening in relationships, is that when both are, deploying those defense mechanisms, is that actually there's like a little vulnerable part, which we also call the inner child, which I'll also give a webinar about in July. I just scheduled it in a few weeks. So the inner child does not want to fight. The inner child just wants to find a solution that everyone is happy with and just wants to make peace. You don't have to make peace in a way that you just please other people and you forget your own needs, but you can make peace in a way that you and your partner actually win, that you find a win-win scenario. And when you do a bit of relationship work and emotional work, most people like that. And of course, there are sometimes, like I sometimes like to have like a little fight, just, kind of like a little bit, just because I find it fun, just nothing too serious, but just kind of like tease my husband a bit, or, make like a play fight. That's not what I mean here at all. You don't have to sort of like become kind of like dull. But what I mean is really those super disconnecting, just fights that make you feel so alone, like alone within your own relationship. That's really what I mean. And that's, to me, what this shows, this picture. And I think this piece of art was created at Burning Man Festival in the US. And yeah, I just thought that's why there's also the desert there. And I thought it was just really beautiful. Exactly. All right. So there's another question for you guys. So how do you respond when you feel attacked by someone? So again, you can use the chat or raise your hand. And of course, if you have any questions or comments about anything I'm saying, just, feel free to interact. It's always nice when people are sharing their own stories, perspectives. So there's not just me blabbling on. And Miss says, I close off. Yes. So that's one of those protective reactions. It says that you close off. And it's really interesting how people really have such different strategies for dealing with feeling attacked. You know, others attack right back, others retreat, some freeze. Yeah. Laura says, I feel hurt and sometimes I react accordingly. Yeah. So it's always interesting to think about what is your go-to reaction when you feel hurt, you know? That way you can get to know yourself a little bit better and see what's actually going on. Or rather, no, what I want to say is, and you can see, you can, because when you understand what is your sort of like weapon, right, your defense mechanism, then you can also see if there's maybe another way that you can be more peaceful. And Maggie says, I will turn on silent mode. Yes, a very classic way to protect yourself. Prajot, oh, I hope I didn't say this name right. I feel hurt and respond to my partner saying we should break up, we don't get along. All right, so that's maybe something like giving an ultimatum. And Laura says, if the person is someone I really care about, I try to speak and explain and find a middle ground. Yeah, that's really great. Definitely. All right. So yeah. So all the things I mentioned here, you guys said were defensive mechanisms. So that's really important to understand. What are the ways that I protect myself when I feel this attack? And again, you know, you can feel attacked by someone, you know, screaming at you or insulting you, but it could also be by someone not talking to you, someone ignoring you, someone giving you just a look, you know, like, ugh, like that kind of like look. And especially, of course, by the people that are closest to us, especially also our parents, we can feel attacked by very, very, very small things, because those are all triggers from childhood, old wounds that get reactivated, and the same also for our partner. Yeah. And the thing is also about defense mechanisms that they often are heightened reactions, so that other people maybe, you know, when let's say you you have a problem with people belittling you. So if I would say something like, "Oh, do you really think, is that really your opinion?" Like you would get so triggered and you would feel so hurt. But if I would say this to other people, they would not feel the same way, because they don't have like an issue with maybe, you know, feeling a little bit belittled. And that's very important to understand with defense mechanisms, because in relationships, that's usually when the biggest fights happen, when two partners have a trigger around like a small topic, and then it just becomes huge. And that's and when we then react in this hyper defensive way, that's when the conflicts often get aggressive. And really, it's like someone can do something really small. Like I always use this example with the wet towel on the floor. You know, it's quite a harmless thing, right? Like someone just leaves a wet towel on the floor. But if another person has a trigger around like a chaotic upbringing, all kinds of things can get triggered, like not feeling valued, feeling disrespected, feeling anxious because it's chaotic, feeling powerless, you know, over the order and the surroundings. I mean, imagine such a huge emotional reaction from such a small thing. And then they can, you know, storm to their partner and say, you don't even love me. Why do you always do that? It's terrible. I told you a million times not to leave the bathroom towel on the floor. So, and then the other person, you know, maybe feels attacked out of nowhere, feels that they are always being criticized, they cannot be themselves, feel like their more lazy side is not loved, you know, and then they start attacking back. And it's just this whole thing where it's just like, because of this one small thing. And if you think about your partnership or past partnerships, that's the thing I would look at. what are the small things that drive you nuts? And can I find ways to actually make peace with it? Because it will just make your relationship like 1,000 times more relaxing, because you're not like, these little things do not trigger these intense reactions. And the same, of course, goes for your partner, right? It's like a both ways thing. And to give maybe like a personal example, like I'm a little bit OCD. And the reason for this is, yes, because my family of origin was not super chaotic, but more emotionally chaotic. So I didn't feel like there was a lot of emotional safety. So for me now, I just look around because there's a bit of chaos behind me, and that's, as I say this. So when I have things in order, I feel like I'm emotionally more safe. And I used to live with flatmates that were so chaotic, and it would really was very hard for me. And I was working with a therapist at that time, and he said to me, Veronica, meditate on the chaos, look at the chaos and realize that this is your chance now to get over something that comes from childhood. And of course, it doesn't mean, that I have to create a life for myself where everything has to be like untidy, right? Because I knew that this was just a certain amount of time. I was living with those people. And now with my husband, we have a really good, system together. We both like it calm and tidy, so it's fine. But what I'm trying to say is that when particular things about your partner just drive you mad, it's always a sign that something in you is unhealed. And it's actually a beautiful chance to feel more calm and relaxed and heal some of those old wounds. Yes, exactly. All right. So I hope that you get now a really good understanding of the problem. So what is the issue with going into war mode with your partner, in attacking him or her, and kind of like always have this guard around you? That basically you think, you're winning, and maybe that's important for you, but actually you're always losing, and there can't be a win for you if it's not a win for your partner. And again, I just want to also highlight that it's really not about pleasing or just giving up your needs for your partner. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that we want to find a way that both you and your partner can win together, so that it becomes a real team. Think about it. In a good team, you would find solutions where everybody wins. In a good business deal, you would find solutions where everybody wins. That's the best possible outcome. And we can apply the same logic to relationships as well. And that's what I call team attitude. So the most important thing for this is the value, very simple, of respect. Like, if you strip everything else away, that I would say is the core central relationship skill, is respect. How can we keep a respectful tone of voice? How can we hear the other person, actually let them finish their sentences? How can we treat them like we would treat, a boss or our manager? And sometimes it really saddens me, because I watch couples on the street that talk to each other as if they are their worst enemies. They have a tone that I'm like shaking, they are like commanding each other around, even maybe calling each other names, belittling each other in front of friends. These are all like things that just automatically will create so much stress in your relationship. So if there's one thing you take from this webinar, I would say learn how to be respectful at all times in your relationship. That's the most important thing. And secondly, the second skill here, and that is a creative skill actually, is to learn how to create win-win scenarios. And that means that you are creatively finding solutions that fit you both. So to give a very practical example, many couples obviously fight about household chores. You know, that's one of the typical things. It's like everyone is busy and, you know, household chores are not like a very fun activity usually. So let's say both you don't have a dishwasher and the fight is about who does the dishes. So in a I win, you lose scenario, it would be that one person gets the will and the other one, for example, does all the dishes, something like this. In a win-win scenario, you would think about, okay, what do we both want? You know, let's say one person wants to do the dishes like 5 times a week, you know, wants the other person to do the dishes 5 times a week because they always come home late, but the other person thinks that's really unfair because they always have very early mornings, something like this. A win-win scenario would be that you both just sketch out what do you need and then that you find a creative solution for this, you know? And for this is really important to just super expand your mind because it doesn't just have to be that either you do dishes, I do dishes. There's like a million other things that you could do instead, you know? For example, you could pay one of your kids to do the dishes. You could maybe make an agreement that it's okay to only do the dishes once a week. You could maybe say, okay, maybe there's a way that we can find the save up for a dishwasher. I mean, this is just kind of like a boring example, but I hope I know you know what I mean, right? Because we get very, very stuck in kind of like boxes, and then we never think that there's actually many solutions around this. And in my own relationship, for example, we had such a discussion because my husband, for whatever reason, he's a lovely man and I really like him, but he just doesn't like to clean the bathroom whatsoever. He just doesn't like it. And then I said to him, okay, babe, I can totally understand, but you know what? I'm also working quite a lot now. And it's just too much for me to do all the cleaning. Could we maybe have a cleaner come every 2 weeks? And so you're like thinking about it. And of course, you think about the expenses. But at the end, he agreed because he just realized that it's also not fair to put it all on me, right? And actually, now we always love to have our clean around because it just brings a lot of peace into our relationship. And of course, these are kind of like cleaning household examples, but this goes for any other area of your relationship. You know, if it's like should you go on holiday with friends together, how often do you see your parents-in-law, and so forth and so on. It's just really important to really understand what the other person wants, and then to find a solution that also fits them. And very often, just simply by really listening to each other, one person is maybe super happy to give in just because they feel so heard, you know, or they really understand the other person's perspective in a completely new way. It's really like magnificent. But people usually are very disagreeable if, let's say, they ask you something and you just get really defensive, then they also get defensive, and that's no way to find any kind of win-win scenario because you don't want to give the other person an inch, right? So that's the usual attitude. And one thing that has helped me so much is to stop seeing my husband or, you know, anyone that I'm having a conflict with as this powerful being that just wants to make my life miserable and wants to dominate me. Most people, if most people are decent, you know, of course, we always have like a toxic person somewhere in our lives, and that's a different story. But if you are with a, in general, decent person, they probably do at every moment the best they can with what they know. So we have to really stop looking at our partners in this way that they just feel so powerful. They probably feel very, very powerless. They're probably super stressed. They probably have a very stressful experience, and that's also the reason why they react this way. So a little compassion and a little remembering this goes such a long way when we have conflicts with someone. Always remember this. And what I hinted already here before is that it's so important that we start understanding and owning our own triggers. So if you notice that you get upset about small things, that you can even ask your friends, is like, would you get upset about this? Can you be honest with me? If they say no, then this is a trigger. And a trigger is much better dealt with in yourself than actually getting your partner to change something. Like, I know some people in relationships that demand like ridiculous things from their partners, because they believe that actually their partner is the problem. But I can see very clearly from the outside that it's their own issue that they're not dealing with. And the problem is, of course, that first of all, you're not going to heal if you just demand that your environment changes all the time, but also they are slowly but surely destroying their relationships because no one wants to accommodate your own issue for a long period of time. And even if they do, it's just going to create resentment and anger. And yeah, as I said, it will bleed out into the relationship. So it's really, really helpful to start doing inner child work and to learn how to create emotional safety for yourself so that you don't feel like you have to defend yourself so intensively. And if you want to learn more about this, I'm going to do a webinar in July, I think on the 12th of July, where I talk about the inner child, which is super, super helpful to know if you struggle, with being very aggressive or in general just defensive around other people, because it shows that a part of you feels very unsafe. And it's just really difficult then to be in relationships and be peaceful if always these strong emotions come up all the time for you. All right, so if there's any questions, yeah, I think that was the last slide. Yeah, exactly. And so understanding is the absolute key to resolving conflicts peacefully. And the easiest way to do this is to share your feelings and needs in any given situation. And then you can create these win-win scenarios that I was talking about. So understand on a more deeper level what's happening under the surface for you and the people involved. Because most of the time when you have some tender feelings around a situation, your partner will have the same tender feelings around the situation as well, right? So you're not the only one. And it's actually so cool and connecting if we can just talk about this and be like, yo, this is actually the reason why I always react so intensely when this topic comes up, because it reminds me of X, Y, Z in my childhood, in my early years, in past relationships. And that can be just so healing and can actually level you from wanting to fight the other person to really being in love with them again. Okay, guys. So if you have questions, you can think about it now. I just super quickly want to show you my offers in case you are interested in working with me. So this is my website, veronicamaya.com. And yeah, you can find all my offers. I work both with women and with men. And I actually help women to awaken their inner goddess, which is so beautiful because Western women have quite forgotten the art of being feminine and actually being like attracting kind of like beautiful, strong men into their lives. And I also help men to feel more strong, respected in their relationships as well. And of course, learn how to talk about their feelings. Classic example. Yeah, so feel free to drop me a message. You can also have a free discovery call with me. And this is what I do. And then there is a comment. So just drop here. Yeah, and then I also wanted to show you my free ebook. If you're interested, there you can also learn more about relationships. And so Um, okay, so Scylla has a question. So sorry, it will be a little bit longer question, but this really could create conflict, and I would like to solve it because otherwise my partner is so kind, but it feels that life circumstances, such as less work for him in his business, makes things harder. My question is about the difficulty and potential continuous conflict it creates when a man is not able to bring enough money into the relationship. Wow, yeah, that's a deep topic. Maybe the business does not go well, maybe for other reasons, but he cannot provide enough money for themselves. So the woman needs to work harder to make ends meet for both of them. Usually women have to work more in her typical woman type job, such as teaching, caring, nursing, to get the same amount as men would, such as programming or engineering. Does that mean that a relationship cannot function well? A woman cannot live in a feminine, relaxed atmosphere if a man is not rich enough. Really, I'm not talking about luxuries, but to provide for food and their children while the woman has time to recharge her batteries, look after her period, and be in feminine energy. Is it selfish from the man if he wants to work less and lets the woman do more work? I understand that situation when a woman wants a high prestige career and maybe the man helps with the household chores, but what if the woman has a job which definitely does not pay as well as a man type job? She wants to be a woman. What should a man do? Men are supposed to be the man provider, don't they? Should women communicate this to their partner? How to avoid conflict? Wow. So thank you, first of all, for your honesty. And yeah, so I think this is, a topic where modern philosophy, modern way of looking at relationships would always say, no, 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 we're all equal. It doesn't matter. But I really strongly disagree. Why? Because thousands of years of men being providers cannot just be wiped out like this, with a few decades of like sexual revolution. So in my experience, for most men, it's deeply painful when they cannot really provide for their family. So it will definitely create stress in the relationship just because they often feel like they are not proper men. But I can also understand, of course, that for you it's also painful because, first of all, you want to have just like a normal, relaxed life, as you said, with like providing for children, having enough food on the table. But I think it's also a matter of feeling attracted to your man and feeling that he is a strong leader, and he doesn't have to be, rich, but just someone that you can look up to. So I would say that it is super important to talk about what you are experiencing, just because if you suppress it, I think it could lead to conflict and stress later along the lines. So what I would suggest for you is to think about how this makes you feel. How are you feeling? And what kind of like stress does it create in your life? But don't talk about any solutions, like what you think he should do. Don't judge him, as being like weak or like a lazy man or something like this. And don't make any bad remarks about his job. Just stay with yourself and share with him how this makes you feel, and especially your fears, your worries, your insecurities. Because first of all, you stay vulnerable, which is always the best way to be in interaction. But this allows you to share your experiencing without potentially emasculating him. And it's like the super amazing trick to actually not give men any solutions, but to let them come up with the solution by themselves. And men are actually great at that. So that's what I would advise you to do. And a really great book that you can read for this is Nonviolent Communication. It's like a classic, read. And there you can really learn how to express yourself in a way that is non-confrontational, and that lets the other person still have the dignity, and also actually to express very clearly what you mean. And Laura also says that, have you never ever worked with a narcissist in a relationship? What would you advise to people who have dealt with them in a romantic relationship? So first of all, that word narcissist gets quite thrown around. So of course, I don't know what your experience is, but first of all, I would you know, kind of like make sure that you are actually dealing with a narcissistic person and not just someone who like triggers you. But if it's a genuine like narcissist, I would say the best advice is to get out of the relationship, because it's very difficult for them to perceive anyone. You know, like narcissists are not like, in general, like horrible people. They just had childhoods in a way that they just feel like they can only think about themselves, and they often use very manipulative and potentially super hurtful behavior to protect themselves. But it's very, very difficult to do anything about it if they don't want to get help, right? So yeah, that's what I would say. But of course, also there is many nuances. So if it's someone that just kind of like triggers you because they're a little bit self-absorbed, I would actually check if you have codependent tendencies. So people pleasing, for example, having really big boundaries, and then work on your own boundaries. That can work wonders with a maybe slightly narcissistic person. Okay. And Maggie says, I've dated a man for 3 times. He likes me a lot, but I don't feel anything about him at all. What should I do? I would say probably don't be in a relationship with him. Yes. All right. That was it. Okay, guys. So, yes, thanks so much for listening. As I said, amazing that you stuck around on this beautiful day today. And I hope that this webinar has helped you. And yes, there's more webinars scheduled. The next one will be, I think, 4th of July about emotions. So what's the purpose of emotions? How to manage our emotions. And then the next one after that is how to work, what is the inner child and how to work with it on 14th July. So I would be happy to have you. As I said, if you want to contact me, just send me a message on Meetup or on my website. And yeah, it was wonderful connecting with you. All the best. Bye, guys.